Hi, boys and girls. I'm going to move myself up to the top corner again so I can get to my arrows. How are you doing today? So today we are working through Module 15, Lesson 5. You just have one lesson and then the review, which is pretty simple this time. So I know you can do it. And it's Friday, so that's a good thing. So I'm on page 451 in your math book. And today's lesson has to do with combining shapes. And I included a paper that looks like this at the back of your packet. Mine's a little bit cut up. You have a paper like this that you're going to use today in your math book. So our I can statement, you can see it right here. I can put combined shapes together to make a new shape. So we're combining some shapes and then we're combining those shapes yet again and repeating them. How can you use combined shapes to make a new shape? So in this space right here, I'm going to show you what you're going to do. The directions, the tiny ones at the bottom say on 1-inch graph paper, and I didn't have 1-inch graph paper. Mine are actually, I think they're a centimeter, so the squares are a little bit smaller. Color the gridded squares to show a combined rectangle or square. So here's what I did. I colored 8 squares. You can pick how many you want to color. You're supposed to make either a rectangle or a square. Then repeat that same shape by coloring squares in a different color. So I did it again. It's the same exact shape. I have 8 squares, 2 by 4. And I did it again. So my shapes are the same. So let's say you decide to make yours just a 2 by 2 little square. You're going to make 3 of them. So you repeat that by coloring them, and then you cut them out, and then you put them together to make a new larger shape. And I'm going to show you what that looks like here in just a second. So I have glue set here to glue mine onto my book. So if I took those 3 shapes that I just showed you how I made and I glued them together, my 3 little rectangles that I made combine to make a bigger rectangle. So that's what we're talking about today, is combining shapes and then combining them again. So let's move over to page 452. And on page 452, it says, Angela combines 6 squares to make a shape. Now, again, you have some choices. 6 squares to make a shape could look like that, right? That's 6 squares making a rectangle. 6 squares combined to make a shape could also look like that. That's 6 squares to make a long, skinny rectangle. So you see what shape you would like to make out of your 6 squares. Then she makes that same shape again. She combines the shapes to make a new, larger shape. Draw a shape that Angela could make. So if you want to, you can glue again. You can use those squares and glue again. You don't have to draw. So I made this shape. I could make one exactly like it, combine them, and glue them onto the page. Or I could make 2 exactly like this and glue them on there. They need to have 6 squares in each one, and you're combining those shapes. Then, though, notice at the bottom, it says, how can you write an equation to model how the squares were combined? So that's where you would say there were 6 squares in my first shape and 6 squares in my second shape, which make a total of 12 of those little squares. We know our doubles facts. We know that 6 plus 6 is 12. Could the new larger shape be a square? And that is a great question. So if I combine this and then another one just like it, it would be 4 squares by 3 squares. So that wouldn't be a square. If I combine this one with another one just like it, it would be 2 squares by 6 squares. That's not a square either. So you experiment with that and see if you could make it into a square. I'm thinking maybe not. All right, our next page, we're using triangles. And so you have the pattern blocks. the paper ones that I made you on that light green paper, and that's what you're going to be using for this lesson. I'm not sure, there we go, why that was light. So Samantha uses two-dimensional shapes to make larger shapes. So she's using these triangles first. She's combining 3 of these triangles in order to make a trapezoid. So if I were you, I would take out the trapezoid and cover it to see what it looks like. Cover it with those 3 triangles. So that's what they're asking you to do. So in your book, it's going to look something like this. Here's your trapezoid, and you could do it with the small part on the top or the small part on the bottom, whichever way you would like. And that trapezoid can be made into 3 triangles. Okay. Then she combines 3 triangles to make another trapezoid. You're just drawing exactly the same thing. You're drawing another trapezoid with the 3 triangles in it. I'm going to go a little quicker this time. There we go. And then at the bottom, she combines the 2 trapezoids to make a hexagon. So this time, again, I hope that you've cut out your light green shapes and you can use those. You're going to put your 2 red trapezoids, yours are green. You're going to put your 2 trapezoids together to create a hexagon. So it would look something like this, and yours will be better than mine because you'll be able to trace your shapes that I gave you for this very reason. And you'll have a line right across here to show that you used 2 trapezoids in order to make that hexagon. At the bottom, combine 2 shapes below. You have these also from yesterday's lesson. You have those quarter circles. Combine 2 shapes below to make that same shape again, then combine the 2 shapes you make. Okay, so let me explain that. So it said first, combine the 2 shapes below. So that would look like this, right? It would be a half circle. Okay, so that's the first sentence. Make the same shape again, then combine the 2 shapes. So what they're telling you is make this again. I'm going to flip it though, because I'm supposed to combine it to make a new shape. So that means if I have 4 of those little quarter of a circles, put them together, they make a circle. I still have my gym clothes on. I did Mr. Roberts' live gym today. It was super fun. I hope you guys joined in. It was awesome. On your own. So this time, you may not have these rectangles. So you may have to draw some rectangles. You can get your parents to help you if you want to, or use some of this graph paper again. Use some of that and make a couple of graph papers. A couple of rectangles. Use 2 rectangles to make a square. Okay, so in order to make a square, it's going to have to be the same length across and the same length going down. So it's going to have to be like 4 squares by 4 squares or 5 squares by 5 squares. And you have to make it into a perfect rectangle. So that's kind of a challenge. So you might have to think about that. You may or may not want to use the graph paper. It's up to you. Make a second square just like the first square. And then put the 2 squares together to make another new shape. This page is a little bit challenging. You might need to have your parents help you, but I'm going to get you started on it. So using 2 rectangles to make a square, here's my shortcut. I'm going to draw my square first because I think the square is easier to draw by itself. Sorry about that little mess there. And I'm going to turn it into 2 rectangles. So I used 2 rectangles to make a square. All right. Make a second square just like that first one. So just do it again. I'm going to make a square. I'm going to say that I made it out of 2 rectangles. It's not perfectly square. Yours will be better, I'm sure, because you're using a pencil with an eraser, and you can use a straight edge to help you. put the two squares together to make a new shape. So here's what that would look like. I've got my one blue square here. I've got my other blue square here. And both of them were created with my rectangles. So I actually have 4 rectangles to make a new, longer rectangle. All right, and that's going to be my growth mindset. So that's the end of the lesson. I think that you guys can do the review pages on your own, and we will be ready to jump in on Monday. We're going to start the fraction chapter, which is super short and super fun. We're going to do that for a couple of days, and then we're going to do telling time for a couple of days, and then we're done. Next week is it. All right, so enjoy your day. Enjoy your weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye.